we have a character here that we eventually will UV unwrap. What I was pointing out is that if you look in this character, every place where you have the possibility of something bending, like the elbow, the knees, the ankles, right here, the pelvis, we have extra edge loops. So I recommend you always do that, add some definition. Same for where the thumb and the hand join and everything else. It means even if you look at the hands, you can see that there are at every bend extra edge loops. So just keep that in mind. That is really, really helpful. And I have my eyes separate, and I'll show you why later, but just for now, take it as this is kind of how you want it to be. So now that you have your character with the extra edge loop and you want to assign material, and let's say you say, hey, I want the pants to be blue and the shirt to be yellow. What we know now, do you remember when we created a few material in the past, and you've done it with a game dev, is you can go in the hypershade and create a material. Say I'm going to do a thong, for example, and I'm going to assign it, I'm going to assign to a thong, sorry. Yep. Why is it disabled? So it told me that the color picker is disabled. I'm not sure why. But done. So you have a material that you call thong that has that, wow, why are the materials so, there is a little glitch in my Maya. I don't know if you see it. I'm supposed to see that material, but I don't. Well, let's hope I see it when I assign it. So you could go in and assign this. I'm going to middle mouse click onto the character. And if you don't see the blue, hit 6. 6 allows materials to show up. So you can see that I say, okay, my pants are good. And then I'm going to create another thong. And this time I'm going to make it yellow. Yes. And that's going to be the shirt. And I'm going to say done. And so how do you assign it to the shirt? You can do something as simple as go into the front view that right now we lost. Do you see they're all two top views? So I'm going to under panel, orthographic front. I have a front 1 actually, and I know why, because there was a glitch in my computer. The front was not working, so I created a new camera and a new front. So let's say you want to select that shirt, so you can go in and say, okay, I'm going to go and make select faces, and I'm going to select all this. And I hold the shift key and select all this, all the arms part, and all this. And you can actually activate symmetry. That would make it a little bit easier, but for the sake of right now, for simplicity, I'm just going to hold the shift key and fill in the blanks. Now you can imagine that right now we're just grabbing the front, but obviously we want to go in the perspective view, spin it around, and make sure that the few faces we did not get on the back, holding the shift key, get selected. Now do not ever ignore the under part, right? It means if we go underneath, we might find out that we have some faces in the armpits, as you can see right here, that we did not catch. That's a bummer. So you want to catch it all. And now that you have these selected and you have the thong in yellow, you click and drag onto this, and now your shirt is yellow. And you can do the same thing for the skin color. Oops, oopsie doopsie, I missed this. You can still do it. It's no brainer, no biggie, right? I mean, especially if there are only 4. So, but that's one way to go, is to go in and individually color your character. Right, so create a thong for the skin tone and thong for the, I say thong because it's a little shiny and maybe that's what I like. But actually, depending on what it is, like if it's a cloth that is like linen, like mine, there's no shine to it, right? The light reflects quite differently than it would on a thong. So I would use a Lambert or a Blinn or something like that. But that's one way you can basically color your character. But what happens if you actually want to create an effect in which right here you have a little, slit with little buttons, or right here in those, in the center of the chest you have a beautiful logo of a company, or whatever you need, or these are jeans and they have little stitches, the jeans you generally see the sewing. So obviously this wouldn't work, and that's why we do UV unwrapping. So what I want you to do is you can close the hypershade for the moment, and I want you to actually create a new document. And you don't have to save this because we're not going to honestly color our character face by face. We're actually going to do the UV unwrapping. So I want you to say new scenes, don't save, and go in and create a cube. If you want to make it a little bit bigger, that's great. Whatever you do, you need to have it all on the positive side of your axis. So I want you to hit W and make sure you move it above the grid. And then I want you to do something very interesting. You see up here where it says workspace, general, I want you to actually choose UV editing in there. And you should be able to see this happening. And I'm going to explain it in a minute. Did everybody get there though? Did you get your UV editing? It's a workspace. You guys remember in Photoshop, in Illustrator, and in Design, in 182, I showed you that you can switch between workspaces. Just the same in Maya. All it is a recording of the screen, so it serves your purpose for doing UV editing. So it's just simply like the view, instead of having 4, you have 2, and you have obviously the UV toolkit open because that's what you're gonna need. But what is happening here? What am I looking at? What am I seeing? So this box and this are exactly the same thing. Simply Maya creates these cute little cuts that you can see because they're generally thicker white line, like this one. And in fact, let me actually show you. See, this top line is where a cut happened. So I'm gonna go in here and choose, for example, edge. And I'm gonna click on that. And sure enough, you can see that that's where a cut happened, and it's thicker because there are actually 2 lines overlapping there. It means as a child, and if you did the same, I used to create cubes and other shapes with paper. And there are certain spots in which you have 2 edges that come together. That you have to glue them together. We generally created a little flap there so there was enough room for the glue to stick. But you see what's happening here. And if I go in here and I say face and I select this face, you can see I'm selecting this one and I'm selecting this one. So this is this. To the point that if I actually go in here and say object mode and then I deselect it, all this goes away, right? Because whenever I have something selected, the UV will show up. Are you with me, everyone? Because it's going to be a lot more complicated when we have our character selected this side. And unfortunately, with a cube, Maya is such a simple shape. The Maya does, in quote, the work for you in the sense that it is basically showing it to you already all opened up and in quote, as if you already did the cutting. But with our character, I'll have to do otherwise. So what I want you to do right now that you have this selected and you see this, I want you to go onto this little camera. Do you see this little symbol of a camera up here? It's called UV snapshot. It's on the UV side of your screen. So on one side, you have the perspective view and a 3D object. On the other side, the UV editor is basically your object in a flattened format. And obviously Maya at first does the best educated guess on how you want it, displayed. And for the cube, it does a fantastic job. You'll see for our character, we'll have to do a lot more work to get it to look the way we want to. But once you click on that button, you get this interface that's telling you that it's saving an image inside the usual Maya project default images, and the image is by default called UV something. Do not choose Maya IFF, because that is not something we can open in Photoshop easily. So the goal here is to be able to create this UV snapshot and then open it up in Photoshop, go in and paint on it, on this snapshot, and then rewrap it onto this box so that we see the result, right? So what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna go and choose, Targa is a good option. There are many good options, but Targa is a really good one. I generally leave the default alone for the matter. I don't change the color of those edges. Remember I told you that the edges where the cuts occur, like these one, all are in white, but I like them in white, I guess because I'm used to it after so many years. So I'm gonna just say apply and close. So I'm gonna repeat what I'm doing. I clicked on the little camera right here. This opens up that is basically saying I'm creating a snapshot, an image out of what I see on this side of the screen. It's going to be a target image. It's going to be 2048 by 2048 pixels, and that's kind of all I need. And I'm going to say apply and close. So now you want to go and find it inside your usual default dye, and I know it should be in images, and indeed it is. And then I'm going to go and open it with Photoshop. And now it's painting time. Then you can do whatever you want on this. Now, for this demo, I try to keep it really simple and create a smiley face or something like that. But the idea here is just to show you how, whenever you have a 3D model, you eventually, when you want to create some sophisticated effects on that model, that is, you know, the buttons, the logo, you would basically create those by, why is it asking me that? That's really weird. Sorry, let me see if I can get it to work. It's almost like nobody ever launched Photoshop in this lab. Generally, it does this when it's the first time you launch it. But let's see if we can overcome this, okay? Oops. Duo as usual. Oh. Okay, perfect. All right, so this is what you get, right? You get this screen with black, and obviously the black can be anything else. Like if you say, hey, I want every face of the cube to be a different color, you can select every square, and you can zoom in and do a precise job. Right now, I'm just gonna eyeball it just for the fun of it. You just select each square. I'm gonna create a new layer, Option Delete. You remember Option Delete, that beautiful shortcut that I taught you many, many years ago? Comes back, you see? Everything comes back. And then we're gonna do the same thing here, but we're gonna use a different color. There we are. Option Delete. Maybe in the next one, we're gonna actually make a smiley face. So I'm gonna, actually, let me do a little more coloring. That is always more fun. As you can see, that it is, when I did the marquee, it was a little short, so there is that black line there. That's not ideal. But the demo is about showing you something in a process, not really necessarily getting it perfectly to look great. You know, I can always take this and extend it later. But let's actually just leave it as it is, Command D. So what I need to do right now is File, Save. Actually, let's save it. And save it as a PSD. Is everybody with me? Make sure that whatever you do, you save it as a PSD. I'm gonna say save again and okay. And I can make some more square, or I can go with the paintbrush and kind of create a new layer for the sake of fun and create a smiley face here, a neutral face here. Not very neutral, huh? And a sad face here. Perfect. So let's say I love it. Command S, I'm gonna save it, and then I can go back into Maya. And I'm gonna go into the hypershade, right here, where I'm gonna create a new material. Sorry that my Maya is buggy and doesn't show the materials. I don't know why, it doesn't give us a right preview for the material. I have no idea. But I'm gonna choose a Lambert this time. And I'm gonna do something that is really important you pay attention. So far, we have clicked on the color and assigned a color, but we don't want to assign a color, we want to assign this UV PSD file we just created, right, UV map. So I'm gonna click on this little checker. So at the very end of each one of these properties, this is kind of, you remember we talked about it as an attribute editor, and it sets all the attributes for things. It can be for a material, it can be for something related to a camera or a light or an object, whatever you have selected is what, So in this case, we have the material Lambert selected. If we go on here, we can change colors and light things. But if you go onto the little checker, you can change big things. For example, if I click on here, you can see that I can assign to this material all kind of stuff from like cloth effects, checker effects. You can make bold, you can do fractal. What I want you to do is do not choose file, because if you choose file, you want to use more like a JPEG, so a flattened, compressed file. But what we want to use instead is a PSD. And once I click on PSD, something weird happened, but I should, at a certain point, because I never remember, every version of Maya seems to have a different, right here, you see it says image name? You need to find a spot where it says image name and it has a little folder next to it. And that will allow you to browse to our images right here and out UV PSD, that is that one that we just created with the faces and the color. Now the preview is horrible, and here is even worse. I don't know why, but I think it's the Lambert, right, that we have? Yeah. So I'm gonna middle mouse click onto the box. And as you can see, the map I created in, I'm gonna actually minimize now the hypergraph. The map I created in the UV is now showing on the box. So what I'm trying to tell you here is simply that you have the ability to create these UV, to flatten whatever model you have onto this, UV editor, take a snapshot, bring it into Photoshop, and then remap it. You could also turn it into a black and white image, and then when you go back into here, found the area it's called bump map that I'll show you next class, in which you can browse to that black and white image, and at that point you have the ability to create a something that protrude or goes in, basically an embossed effect or a like carved effect. My point is, next class I'll show you how we can get those buttons that we paint on the character to protrude a little bit, and that you do through the same PSD file we just created, turn it into black and white, and turning anything that is white, the lightest you can, because obviously you can go from super stark white to a grayscale to kind of create that effect, so that there is not a stark, the button doesn't show up like a rigid thing, but there is some softness around it. But basically anything white is going to protrude, everything black is going to intrude, go in. But I'll show you that in next class, because I just wanted to introduce the concept, and then when we go into doing it on a character, there's way more satisfaction, in quote, to create these type of effects. Does anybody have any questions? I'm going to stop the video and then you can ask.